Welcome back to another YouTube exclusive right here on Always College Football. Today, we're going to do the top 10 running backs of the college football playoff era. Now, you're probably sitting there wondering, all right, when was the college football playoff era? When did that start officially? And we took it from 2014 until 2023. So these guys, all for the most part, played a vast majority of their career in the college football playoff era. So not included are some guys that are just on the outside looking in. The Monty Balls of the world, the Melvin Gordons of the world, the Todd Gurleys of the world. Close, but no cigar. So we opted to go with the top 10 running backs that played college football almost exclusively in the college football playoff era. At number 10, went with Royce Freeman. A forgotten superstar, I think, for many people, but he was first team all Pac-12. He was Pac-12 Offensive Freshman of the Year and rushed for over 5,600 yards and 60 touchdowns in his career. That career spanned from 2014 to 2017. I do think it's really interesting. I mean, the all-time leading rusher for Oregon. And you think about Michael James and some of the other great players that came before him. Royce Freeman could do kind of everything. I mean, whether it was kind of a short yardage run, something out to the outside, a big gainer, you name it, like he was amazing. So Royce Freeman comes in at number 10. And a slight surprise at number 9, Travis Etienne comes in at number 9. As a true freshman, he actually led Clemson in rushing, despite not starting any of the games that he appeared in. 107 yards, 107 carries, 766 yards, about 7+ per carry, and 13 touchdowns. Also added a little bit in the passing game as well, but he got better as time went on and surprised everybody by coming back in 2020. I think that was a shock to most of us, but he was a second team AP All-American, ACC Player of the Year in 2019, and brought them back in the national title game with 1,600 yards and 19 touchdowns on just 207 carries. That was about 7.8 per. But like I said, 37 passes caught in his second to last year for 432 yards and 4 scores. So he became an elite player, obviously a 2-time national champion and a guy that was amazing there for the Clemson Tigers. At number 8, Leonard Fournette. Now, he was there from 2014 to 2016, 616 carries, 3,800 yards, 40 touchdowns. Now, if you look at what he was in 2015, he was a consensus All-American, was first team All-SEC in 2015. He was amazing. Now, if you look at the rushing numbers that some of the other guys that he'll be up against, not really there. But when he was healthy, you'd have a hard time finding a guy that was more physically imposing than Leonard Fournette. I mean, he started only 24 games in his career, which is pretty mind-blowing when you really think about it. So a short-lived tenure, but still went for nearly 4,000 yards and had 19 games over 100 rushing yards with rushing outputs of 284, 244, 233, 228, 212. So he was a one-man wrecking crew, especially in 2015, with the exception of the game against Alabama where he struggled, but he lit it up that year. At number 7, Dalvin Cook. Another guy, by the way, if you look at some of the years too, like 14 to 16 was like all-time incredibly good players at the running back spot in college football. Dalvin Cook also there from 14 to 16, rushed for over 4,400 yards, first team All-American in 15 and 16, was just an amazing player. Was the ACC champion in 14, and he averaged 6.5 yards per carry during his career. All right, one of the most lethal players that you could ever find, whether it was catching a screen or doing something after the catch and making it work. I mean, he was amazing. And toward the end of the 2016 season, before announcing his decision to go pro, he eclipsed Warwick Dunn's program record for rushing yards. So 2-time All-American, and knowing that he was up against some great players and still never slowed him down, Dalvin Cook in there at number 7. At number 6, I went with Nick Chubb, also 14 to 17, 758 career carries, 47, 69 yards, 44 touchdowns, has now gone on to be a great NFL player as well. But a first-team All-SEC in 14, second-team All-SEC in 17. The thought, too, that he was able to bounce back is part of what elevates him in this conversation for me. How many running backs become one of the best in the league, in the SEC that is, after a season-ending ACL injury and didn't skip a beat? His injury was so bad, and yet it did not factor in whatsoever when he came back in 16 and became the player that he became. He also came this close to winning a national championship in 2017 and had to share a lot of carries with Sony Michel. So if you think about what Nick Chubb was able to do, statistically speaking, man, just one of the all-time greats, especially with what he did after the knee injury and responding to what was a horrendous injury there in 2015 on Rocky Top. At number 5, probably a little bit low on the list here, but I felt like it was an appropriate place to put him, Christian McCaffrey of Stanford. Now, Paul Hornung Award, Jet Award, Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year, first team All Pac-12. This was all back in 2015. What made him so incredibly special was how good he was in the return game, how good he was in the passing game. 99 catches for 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns in his 3-year career, 632 carries and 3,900 yards, 21 touchdowns. So the versatility, I think, is the biggest reason why you have to include Christian McCaffrey in this category. He was so versatile, underrated nationally when you think about how much speed he had. And then he gave way to Bryce Love. And Bryce Love had, I think, a bunch of really good games in his career, but it was never quite the versatile weapon that was Christian McCaffrey. So Christian McCaffrey, Rose Bowl champion and a great Stanford player there in 15. He comes in at number 5. At number 4, Saquon Barkley. He was there from 15 to 17. Numbers aren't crazy, but if you actually look at the receiving numbers, that was a little surprising to me. He also won the Paul Hornung Award back in 2017, had 1,200 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns, but he made most of his hay on the ground. 3,800 rushing yards in his career, 43 touchdowns on just 671 carries. One of the best, most incredibly special all-purpose players I've covered. He did it all. Found really creative ways to kind of get involved in the run game, get involved in the pass game. I thought was a great route runner out of the slot and was at one point the Heisman front runner before things just didn't really work out. But still, he was an excellent player there for Penn State. He comes in at number 4. At number 3, I went with Ezekiel Elliott. Now, you look at Ezekiel Elliott, and most will be remembered for what he did during the championship run in 2014. Just completely taking over against Alabama and having another big evening against Oregon just a couple weeks later in the national championship. But what he did in 15 was pretty remarkable as well. Ohio State kind of entrenched in a bit of a quarterback derby, couldn't decide Cardale Jones, couldn't decide JT Barrett. Well, Ezekiel Elliott was there for them, and he was exceptionally good. The Big Ten most valuable player in 2015, the offensive player of the year, second team All-American, first team All-Big Ten. I mean, just an amazing player there for the Ohio State Buckeyes. And I think when you look at what he's done, now he also was going up, and J.K. Dobbins just narrowly missed the list. But J.K. Dobbins, Mike Weber, bunch of guys that you could have easily made a case on behalf of. But Ezekiel Elliott was just so incredibly good. 58 career touchdowns. When you think about what he was able to accomplish, man, just an amazing. And you look to some of the biggest games that he had were against the best competition. So that leaves Ezekiel Elliott at number 3 in our top 10 list of the best running backs in college football since the college football playoff got started in 2014. At number 2, Jonathan Taylor. One of the few backs that didn't play from 14 to 17. He was there from 17 to 19. But my goodness, when you look at the numbers, nobody has rushed for more yards in the college football playoff era than Jonathan Taylor. 6,100 yards, nearly 6,200, 6,174, 50 touchdowns, 42 catches, 402 yards through the air, and 5 touchdowns. Doak Walker Award 2 times in 2018 and 2019. Unanimous first-team All-American in 2018 and 2019. And the Big Ten Newcomer of the Year in 2017. He's 6th on college football's all-time rushing list and one of only 7 players to surpass 6,000 rushing yards. And the fact that he eclipsed the 2,000 barrier twice and was 23 yards away from doing it as a freshman in 2017 is absurd. To average nearly 6.7 yards per carry over your career, despite really, always getting it about 25 times per game and facing an 8-man box almost every time he faced it, is pretty ridiculous. So had he chose to come back in 2020, he would have probably been the all-time rushing record and beaten Ron Dane with every statistical performance ever. But Jonathan Taylor is just an all-time great and has now gone on to become a great NFL player as well. And at number 1, Derrick Henry of Alabama. Nothing can quite come close to the performance that he had in winning the Heisman Trophy in 2015. He's the lone Heisman Trophy winner on the entire list. He also won the Maxwell Award, and he also won the Doak Walker Award. The Walter Camp Award, was a unanimous All-American there in 2015. Just 602 career carries, but if you look at the carries that he had in 2015, the first time he was a full-time starter, well, at 6'3", 240 pounds, he rushed for over 200 yards in 4 of his final 9 games, including a 44-carry, 271-yard performance in the Iron Bowl win at Auburn. He followed it up with a career-high 46 carries for 189 against Florida in the SEC championship game and had 3 touchdowns against Clemson in the national title game. So he scored at least 1 touchdown in every game that year, finishing with a nation's leading 28 rushing scores. What's crazy is that he was never the full-time back until 2015. And even in 2015, he was splitting carries with Kenyon Drake, and then Kenyon Drake got injured, and that what allowed Derrick Henry to really take over the bell cow approach. So I think I went with ceiling there, and Derrick Henry, as the sole Heisman Trophy winner on the list, had to take the top spot for me.